Hello, my name is Michael Clark. I'm from Middletown, Ohio, and I struggled with addictions to methamphetamines, Oxycontin, and Suboxone, marijuana, over the course of the past 10 years. I grew up in a home that you would never think that addiction would have happened to me or been prevalent in my area, but it did. It happened to me. I was a three-sport varsity athlete. I was class president in my class, graduating with honors. Then I went on to college where I became a nurse. I went to Kettering College of Medical Arts in Dayton, Ohio. And I started a career in nursing where I was an intensive care nurse, surgical intensive care nurse, and a cardiovascular intensive care nurse. The whole time all being addicted to painkillers at the time through a back injury that I had. An injury, I herniated some discs in my back, which then led to legal prescriptions. The doctors weren't very cautious at how much they were prescribing me, which led to more and more and more. And I was unable to stop. After about 6 months of the prescriptions, I realized how big of a hold it had on my life. And I was waking up, going to work sick. I was climbing the ladder in the nursing world. I had a bachelor's degree in nursing, and I was on the fast track to, management or administration. But I had a closet addiction that nobody knew about but me. And as time prevailed, my family found out about it and caused a lot of destruction in my life. Shortly before I had my son in 2013, I was severely addicted to Oxycontin, taking 5 or 6 80-milligram pills a day. I was prescribed oxycodone pills, but that wasn't enough. I needed to go much more, take much more, just to stay right. Wasn't even getting high anymore. And ended up losing one of my jobs and decided to get some help. I thought was help, which was Suboxone. And that started a huge downward spiral as well in my life because I really thought my life was all together, but in reality it really wasn't because I became a slave to that medication as well. So over the next 3 years, I ended up going back to work and resuming my nursing career, all while keeping everything hidden. I was emotionally a train wreck. I couldn't tell anybody about what was going on with me because I would have been cast away in the nursing world. So the help that I got wasn't really help. It was, going to a clinic and sitting, waiting on my Suboxone prescription, filling out little workbooks that no one checked, and I really never got myself better. I was relying on myself to get better, and it never worked. So after 3 years of the bondage of the Suboxone addiction, I'm working full-time. I'm actually working cardiovascular nursing, intensive care nursing, and I lost my job for being on the Suboxone. And even though I was legally prescribed it, the nursing board doesn't approve of being on the medications because those medications are used to treat addiction. And you take an oath as a nurse that if you become addicted, you will report yourself. But that is career suicide. So I took my chances and tried to get better on my own. So, and to people on the outside, my addiction was closeted and it was stable until the point that I lost my job. In 2017, I was making good money. I had everything that you would think. I was a check mark in the box type of guy. You graduate high school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids. But the one check mark I didn't ever think I would be is being a drug addict. And I had a check mark in that box too. But when I lost my last nursing job because of being on the Suboxone, they reported me to the State Board of Nursing, and I immediately lost my nursing license that day. So overnight, I go from making good money, having benefits, having a career that could support a family, to legitimately nothing overnight. And I tried to rely on myself, and that was a downward spiral in my life. Started hanging out with the wrong people again. You know, before I never really hung out with any bad people. I really wasn't doing crazy bad things, but what I was doing is I was keeping everything isolated. I was isolating myself from family members, from friends. You know, my coworkers had no idea. And I got involved in a world that I never thought I would ever get involved in, and that's the world of methamphetamines. I knew some guys that were involved in the using and selling of the drug. And I knew them from an acquaintance from high school. And they said, hey, why don't you invest some money with us? Okay. Invest a little bit of money, get back a little bit of money. Invest a little bit more money, get back a little bit more money. I wasn't touching the drug. I wasn't involved in the scene, but I was, making a little money. And then I started using methamphetamines as a part of this. Next thing you know, I'm dealing and using the drug myself. Not even trying to go up and face the nursing board and see what's going on with that or try to get my license back. But I was trying to cover the pain that I had from the loss in my life with drugs. And that's when my life really started to unravel. I was married at the time. That relationship was downhill fast. I was running around with other women. I was never coming home. I was completely running. I was just running from everything that meant anything to me. All for a high that I didn't even understand why I was doing it, Next thing you know, I'm completely immersed in a subculture that I never knew anything about. I never knew anybody that did meth. I never grew up in a neighborhood where people did meth. I didn't go to a high school where people did meth. I didn't work with people that did it. And now I'm submerged in this lifestyle of never sleeping and never eating and going to Walmart in the middle of the night and constant stealing and this and that. And not only am I immersed in the using of the drug, but I get involved in the big time selling of the drug. What started out as a little bit of way to make money ended up being what eventually on a road that ended up sending me to prison. So after 6 or 7 months of running with these people and using and selling, and I start catching cases, and I can remember after the first time that I caught my case, you think that'd make you wake up a little bit. Here I am, a disgraced nurse. At that time my marriage is on the rocks. I really have no relationship with my children. At that time I had a little girl by that time too, because I'm waking up every day, immediately starting to use meth, and then I'm just stuck on everything that doesn't matter. Worried about overly excessive behaviors such as, cleaning or taking something apart or all the, the stereotypical things with methamphetamine use that just drive people to an insanity. Physically, I was picking myself apart. I was constantly just so angry with myself that I got so involved with this stuff, but I couldn't get out of it because I was to a point with it where I couldn't, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be able to, in my mind, I couldn't wake up and do anything. How am I going to make any money? How am I going to live? How am I going to, provide? How am I going to do anything like that, And the thing was, I was trying to fill a void in my life with the drugs that I would later figure out that only Jesus could fill in my life. When I was a kid, I grew up in church, and I was there, but I wasn't there. I was present physically, but spiritually I was out on another planet. I almost thought it was ridiculous. People would, pray constantly, or people that would study the Bible, or people that would do any of those types of activities, because to me, I felt like this stuff doesn't work. But then looking at it now, going back, I still remember the same people that were dedicated to the Lord and following His principles of life and being a Psalms 1 Christian, or following the Sermon on the Mount, just being a good person, and not only that, but putting their total faith and trust in Jesus. Those people are just continuing to do well. And I'm not saying everything in their life is perfect, because it's not, but when the storms of life come through, their house doesn't fall down and crash like mine did. Because I didn't have a solid foundation. My foundation was in myself. And once I realized myself wasn't going to be able to get me out of any of this, is when I actually started to get better. I remember after I caught my first case, it was a small possession charge in the city of Middletown. The police detectives, I had a secret compartment in my Yukon that, the police could never find the dope in. I'd get pulled over and searched. The dogs would hit on the car. They would never be able to find any dope. And there was a police officer in the city of Middletown, Officer Morgan, who was very persistent about there being drugs in my car. And he did a lot more research on the hidden compartment that they didn't think was there, but then he realized it was there. And I'm thankful for that today, because that was actually one of the cases that ended up sending me to prison later on. But they impounded my truck. They got into the secret compartment. And they found a pretty good bulk amount. I think it was 4, 5, 6 grams or something like that in my secret compartment, which indicted me on some more charges. So now I got what they did in the first case is they just scraped stuff off the floorboards in my car to be able to get me on something, and then they got that other stuff. But that was just the start in the process. But I can remember bailing out of jail, and you think that would wake you up, but it didn't wake me up. I was going right back to Dayton, getting more, starting the party over. They had my cell phone, they had everything. I'm just restarting. My family at this point in time, they're thinking, my mom and dad, my sister, they're probably thinking that I'm pretty hopeless, In my mind, what did I have to live for at that time? I had spent 5 years in college to become a nurse, and I'd thrown that down the toilet. So what do I do now? And I was a slave at that point in my life to my sin, my sinful nature, my sinful life, my sinful behavior. And 2 weeks later, I catch another case, felony 3-level drug case. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I catch another round of felony cases. So here we are, a 45-day period, and I'm got 2 felony 3s, 2 4s, and a 5, and 20-something misdemeanors. And I'm thinking, what do I do now? What do I do now? So I just started using more and more and more. I don't show up for court. I just keep running. Until a point, I was even on a plane on my way to Texas to go to treatment. Some people from family friends of ours got me hooked up with a treatment center down there. I flew all the way to Chicago, got on a plane, and came back. I couldn't do it. I wasn't ready to surrender yet. So I come back, start selling again, using. I thought I was some big shot, somebody important, and really I was just being destructive to other people, just like I was being destructive to myself. Over the period of the next 6 months, I go into hiding. I got felony warrants. I got the cops knocking down my door every day. I'm staying at friends' houses. I'm staying here. I'm staying there. I don't have a place to lay my head. Looking over my shoulder everywhere I go. It was horrible. I was just using to numb the pain of the situation that I was in. I think that says a lot about how much of a hold the addiction has on us, because in the midst of using, nothing else mattered to me. Nothing. It was just my wife didn't matter to me. I cared about my kids, but if I feel like if my head was in the right spot, I would have been a better dad to them, because I couldn't be the dad that I can be today being sober. So I'm running from these felony cases. I'm running. Finally get picked up. I think it's probably, November of 2017. Go to court, spend a week in jail. They let me out. Show up for court. Well, that wasn't happening. So here we are again, running. Just keep running from the problems. The problems just keep stacking up. I end up going on a high-speed chase with the cops one night, and I get away. And I remember that night laying in a cornfield as I thought there were police officers looking for me, but really I don't think there were. I don't think they had any idea where I was. It's just, why would you ever want to constantly be scared that somebody's there that's not there? Constantly look out your window and no one's there. It was, the drug had a hold on me that, I think unless you've done methamphetamines, you don't realize how paranoid you really get. And, still to this day, when I drive by through some places in town or this or that, I'll look at somewhere and think, how stupid I must have looked laying down in that field in the middle of the night thinking people were coming to get me or this or that. I mean, it sounds so ridiculous now, but, I know there's a lot of people out there that have been there, and it's terrible. So, finally, in December 2017, have some issues, and there ends up being a SWAT team standoff at my house. The police had been looking for me. I heard the U.S. Marshals had been looking for me. And 36 Butler County sheriffs, all on their knees, pointing AR-15s at my house. And I realized I finally had to surrender. Kicked the back door in. They come in and get me. And, what do I do now? So I remember missing Christmas that year. It was the first time my addiction had really had any, kind of a lot of times when I went to jail, I was able to bail out. But I missed Christmas, and it really hurt me. It was being in a jail cell, withdrawing and coming detoxing off the meth. Just so after about 3 days, you finally wake up a little bit and you're like, man, what am I doing? Why have I put this drug over my family? Why have I put it over my well-being? Why have I chosen to just this path of destructive behavior that I know is not right? And so that Christmas, that was a hard one for me. I was very alone. And I think it was in that brokenness that God really started to tug on my heart a little bit. He was knocking at the door, but I just wasn't ready. So I had about 6 weeks that I was in there, and then they released me on pretrial. I don't know why they released me, but they did. So I come out, I have my head on straight. Some family situations happen. You know, my wife ended up leaving with the kids. And here I am again in this broken state. You know, I think I made it 5 or 6 days after coming out of jail for 6 weeks. Maintained my sobriety, still trying to rely on myself. I couldn't do it. So she leaves with the kids. Here I am in my house, all alone. By the way, I got 10 years in prison hanging over my head that I still am fighting cases on. They released me on pretrial. Got 2 felony 3s, 2 4s, and a 5. And I don't know, you know, normally prosecutor and the judge are not very friendly when you catch a case, bail out, catch another one, bail out, catch another one. So all the odds were stacked against me at that point, especially with the trafficking and the aggravated possession charges I had. So I'll never forget, I got to the state of brokenness because I don't have any warrants or anything. I'm released on pretrial. I think I literally sat at my house in a bathrobe, just sobbing, you know, just so emotionally a wreck about everything that's going on. Because now I've realized I've lost my family. You know, they were always there by my side, and now they were kind of like fed up with me, and that was hard. I remember I wouldn't even leave the house. At that point, I was so broken I couldn't sell. I mean, all I could do is use. I had a terrible marijuana problem at the time, too. All through the course of this, a horrible marijuana problem. And I remember I had a friend of mine that he would drop off 2 or 3 grams of meth a day, and you know, eighth of marijuana. You know, I never even had any money for it. Just a friend, you know, just knew how of a mess I was. Whether it was right or wrong that he did, it was wrong. But you know, I was just going insane. So I literally sat at my kitchen table in a bathrobe, alone, doing meth and smoking marijuana for the next 4 weeks. It was the most broken, crying, just sobbing. It was the most broken state that I've ever been in. And I think that's really when God was really working on my heart to say, hey, are you going to finally surrender? What's going on? So there were some family issues where there was some protection orders against her family members. And, you know, I didn't know all the logistical rules of one of them, but I was trying to see my kids, and I go to where she's staying, and the cops were called, and I violated my protection order. So here I've caught another case. Got warrants out for my arrest. At this point in time, my parents are just calling me, asking me, hey, will we come over, eat something? You know, have you eaten? Have you slept? Have you drank anything, you know? Even ordering pizza and sending it to the house just so I would have something to eat. Begging me to go to treatment. You know, my lawyer, when he released me on pretrial, said, Mike, if you go to treatment, the judge will probably accept that as, you know, you're trying to do something. He ain't going to pull you out of treatment. I remember me and my mom going down to Genesis in Hamilton, Ohio, and being in the parking lot. And I couldn't walk in the door. I was too worried about how I looked. I used to pick at myself constantly, like my face and all over my body, thinking there were things there that weren't there. And I was so embarrassed at the way that I looked, and I was so self-conscious about how just so self-destructive I had been on myself. I probably lost 30 pounds in that 5-week period. I can't remember eating more than 4 or 5 times. And I remember about a week before I got picked up the last time, my Aunt Tammy came over. Most people were afraid of me at that point in time. They were too I was too volatile. I was very violent at times. I was very angry. I would yell at people. I was just not myself. I was completely overtaken by something that's just sinful and of the devil and the drugs. And she came over and she sang "Jesus Loves Me" to me in my most broken state, and reassured me that not only did Jesus still love me, but she loved me and my family loved me. I was on the verge of suicide that day, I remember. I sat there in that house all alone for 4 or 5 weeks thinking, 2 years ago I'm making $30 an hour as a nurse, driving a brand new car, have everything I ever wanted. And now I'm sitting in my living room snorting meth, smoking marijuana. I have 5 pending felonies, and I've lost everything. For what? To stay up all night and color, or to stay up all night and listen to music, or to hang out with people that were just as broken as me, that we were all trying to just cover up our pain with something that really wasn't covering up our pain at all, but just making the problems worse? That's a hard pill to swallow. Really hard. But I remember that my mom and dad, they called me. After I had caught that violating a protection order charge, there was warrants out for my arrest again, so I couldn't stay at my house anymore. So my only place of what I thought at the time was, serenity or safeness was gone. So now I'm hiding behind storage units. I violated my felony pre-trial by catching another misdemeanor charge. And my mom and dad called me over one night and they said, "Hey, will you come over and eat some dinner and get some food, take a shower?" And I said, "Yeah." And after I'd gotten out of the shower, I'd eaten a little bit of food. They informed me that the police were here. Another family member had called and let them know that I was here for my benefit, so that I could go take care of business. I remember my dad looking at me and saying, "Michael, you got to go take care of this stuff. You can't run from it forever." So I'm at the Middletown City Jail in Middletown, Ohio. If anybody been there knows about it. It's called the Dungeon. It's terrible. It's cold and it's dark. You're isolated. And, I'm just hoping to get transferred to Butler County sooner than later. So I'm there for about, probably about a week. And I'm begging people to, do whatever they can. So they're looking for treatment options. They're doing this, they're doing that. At that point, it was too late for that stuff. I had the chance and I didn't go. So then, one day I'm talking to my mom on the phone. I grew up in church. My family is Christian people. And I said, "Mom, I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to a doctor. I need to talk to somebody who can help me." And she said, "You need to talk to Jesus." And took that to heart. About 45 minutes to an hour later, the corrections officer comes back and he said, "Clark, you got a clergy visit." And I thought, wow. I hadn't been to church in a long time. Thought, what pastor's here to see me, And it was Pastor Dwayne Harney out of Community Harvest Church. He came and saw me. Saw a broken, shattered guy that had just lost it all. And he looked at me and he said, "I don't want to sound like a broken record, Mike, but you need Jesus." And I thought, man, this is too coincidental, My mom tells me that. He comes in here and tells me that. So when we leave the visit, I asked the corrections officer, I said, I need some time to myself to think. I said, can I just go to the solitary confinement and be by myself? And she said, yeah. I want to say that was probably pretty close to this time right now last year, about a year ago. And I surrendered my life to Christ. I laid on the floor and I told God, I said, I'll do anything you want me to do if you just help me feel better. If you will just help deliver me from the thoughts that I have. If you'll deliver me from the bondage and slavery and sin to these drugs and it was a process. It was, the transformation in our lives and in our hearts is a process. But that process started that day when I was willing to submit to the Lord and say, hey, I can't do this anymore, but you can. And so a few days later, I get sentenced on the violating a protection order charge. I think I got 90 days on it, which that's nothing compared to what I'm facing in felony court. So they transfer me to Butler County Jail. And I start reading the Bible every day. I started off in the New Testament, read the Gospels, then I read them again. And at that point in time in my life, I had to relearn how to be a man again because my mind was so polluted with thoughts of what being a man was. Being a man's not running around with other women. Being a man's not lying, cheating, stealing to get whatever you want. That's not what being a man is. Being a man is following the principles of the Bible, being honest. Submitting your life to God and let Him do what you can't. Being able to admit your faults. Admit that your behavior is sinful and ask for forgiveness. And so at Butler County, I started rebuilding relationships that were really broken that I never thought I would rebuild. First of all, with my parents, I started rebuilding a relationship with my mom and dad and my sister, my other family members that I had hurt. And I started talking to Pastor Harney every day on the phone. And he would disciple me through the Bible. I would read a passage of Scripture. And, I went to Christian college. I studied 1, 2, 3, and 400 level classes in the Bible, but I never applied it to my life, so I never understood it. It was just literature. It wasn't life. And once I started really studying the Bible and understanding that this is more than just a fairy tale, this is real. The people and the stories are there to tell a story, to show us who Jesus really is and who the people He came to save. And once I really realized that what the Jesus dying on the cross for my sins really meant and how I was forgiven and I was justified by my faith in Him, it helped me forgive myself. Realizing that there's no condemnation in those that are in Christ Jesus helped me forgive myself. It's not justifying my behaviors, but it took me away from the guilt and the shame and the isolation that I was in my drug use. I was able to start the healing process, and that discipleship method that Dwayne Harney gave to me and some other guys that came into my life through that time in my life is the same discipleship that I encourage others today through my ministry to do others that are struggling with drug addiction. So I'm in Butler County about, 4 or 5 weeks at that time. And I'm finally starting, this is the first time I've been sober. And, I had that 6-week period of sobriety before when I was in there before I got released on pretrial. But that was just a poor me attitude. I wasn't reading the Bible like I should have, and I wasn't doing any of that kind of stuff. But then when I was at that point in time, this time, I started seeing people come in off the streets and the brokenness they were in drug addiction, and I could see it for myself. Like, is that what I looked like? Is that the hopelessness that I looked like? So then I start talking to a guy I'm in a cell with, and he had struggled with drug addiction, had a relapse, was on his way back to prison, and I said to myself, we got to do something about this. There's got to be something we can do to help these people that are struggling with this stuff, just like we did. Who's better to help somebody than somebody that struggled with it? And I had tried other programs in my life, and there's a lot of good you can draw from some of those programs and stuff, but the thing that was really helping me was this: the Bible, the saving power of the gospel message. And so as I started to study and realizing how broken some of these biblical characters were in their prior life and sin, gave me hope for my future. And so we're up studying one night, and I go to bed, and I'm Butler County inmate 180-200. If I went to jail today, I'd be booked under that number. And I was awoken one night from a dream. Not a dream, but just awoken. I don't dream, but I was awoken, and I looked at my bracelet. You have a little bracelet that you wear. It has your picture on it and your number. And the idea came to me to put a G in front of the first zero, and after the second zero, make it a lowercase d. 180 to God. Turning your life to God. 180-degree turn to God. Away from your sinful behavior and turning to Him. And I was all excited about it. I thought, wow, this is awesome. So I start telling the pastor about it, and I start telling my mom. And at that point in time in my life, it was just an idea. So, I just keep on pressing on. And the Lord was giving me favor, and He was blessing me through this whole process, and I didn't even realize it at the time. So I go to my felony sentencing, or actually when I took my plea deal, and they said they're willing to deal with you. They're going to give you a felony 3 and a felony 5. They're going to drop the other charges if you plead to it. I said, well, how much time am I going to do? And he said, I don't know. He said, probably 4 years. I thought, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And then he said, well, he might give you a program. So I thought, well, there we go. We got something. So then we go back a few weeks later, it's sentencing day. I got some character witnesses to say, hey, this guy's changed. He's not the same person that he once was. And the judge said, your charges are consistent with somebody that was selling the drug. He gave me 9 months in prison. So... and that was the beginning of a journey. That was just absolutely, it was an amazing thing. It was what saved my life, So I set off from Butler County Jail in June to go to the reception center. You're locked down 23 hours a day. And it was a time for preparation and study for what I would go on to face at Lancaster Prison. Couldn't talk to anybody. I got like one call a day. I could call 15 minutes maybe. Call mom. But I had no communication from all these guys that had discipled me. Now it was just me and God, 23 hours a day. And so I started just continue to study and continue to develop a program to help people and to help have some type of answer to be able to minister to people. And I realized that, so many people want to help with this stuff, but they don't know how to minister to the drug addict. They don't know how to fellowship with one. They don't know how to love them. They want them fixed, but they don't know how to fix them. So I just started, was drafting up some ideas, and just continue to, relate them to biblical stuff. And then I get sent to Lancaster Prison, Southeastern Correctional Institute, after being at CRC for 2 months. And the first week I got there, I got the papers that my wife had filed for divorce and all that stuff. And which is to be expected in the circumstances. You can't run around with a whole bunch of other women and not expect that to happen. But I started to develop friendships at Lancaster, which is a level 2 prison, so it's open. And I was able to start, really starting to minister to guys. Maybe some guys had a decent amount of sober time, but they were still battling the sobriety thing. And I just kept studying about it. And I thought, you know what? If anyone's in Christ and he's a new creation, then why are these guys battling the sobriety thing? Who the Son sets free is free indeed, right? If you have total freedom through Jesus Christ, and you don't have to battle a sobriety thing. And I know everybody's a little bit different, but if you are really, truly willing to submit to this stuff, you don't have to battle that stuff anymore. And sure, we all have tribulations, but the Bible has told us to be of good cheer because Jesus has overcome it all. And that it's true. So I start linking up with guys, and I got the ministry thing in the back of my head, and this idea and this hurting community in the Middletown, Franklin, Germantown, Dayton community that I'm coming home to, and thinking we got to do something about this. The church has got to get involved with this stuff and start helping these people. And I know some churches are involved, but they're far and few between. Most churches are like, what are we going to do with these people? We can't trust these people. We can't do this. But if nobody reaches out to them, who's going to reach out to them? So we do some pretty cool projects when I'm in prison, partnering with Community Harvest Church in Germantown. We, loving on people is a big part of this. You got to love on people. If these people wouldn't have loved on me in the midst of my storm, I probably would have never gotten better. I needed that discipleship. I needed that Christian fellowship, that love that these people gave me, and the comfort and the peace that God gave me in the midst of my personal storm. So I see a need in the prison. I see a lot of these guys, they don't have people sending them anything. They don't have anybody in commissary on their books. They're wearing state shoes. So I was telling Pastor about it. It was around Christmas time, and I said, hey, we got to do something about this stuff. So we were able to get together some of a fundraising project, and we were able to send 17 guys as boxes, which are like clothes and shoes box. So guys had white T-shirts, underwear, clothes, shoes, the whole 9 yards. And these are guys that the church didn't even know, just showing an act of kindness and love to these guys in the prison. And that was the first project that our ministry did, because our ministry focuses on drug and alcohol addicts, but it also focuses on people with other needs too, So we were able to do that. We were able to do some Christmas gifts for the children of the prisoners, similar to an angel tree, but we did our own. So starting to build some steam, and as I'm getting ready to get out in February, we're starting to see what was going on, and started to have, some ideas about having meetings at the church, because the thing about it is, I think when I first envisioned it, I thought, well, these drug-addicted people will flock to the church to go to these meetings, but that's not really how it always works. But that has happened a little bit. But I feel like, too, the better way we can, equip people to handle this kind of stuff is to educate them and to get them on board with how do we help these other people. And that's what my ministry really started focusing on, and that's what we continue to do is, So I got out in February, and I was able to share my testimony at church 4 days after getting out of prison. The church knew who I was. They had been praying for me. And there's power in prayer. There's a lot of power in prayer. And there's power in the fellowship of being in a church with people that love you. You would think that when I came out of prison, I would have been like exiled, like people would have hated me, but no. Especially when you are what I was in the community that I was. I'm the guy that was once a nurse, then to drug dealing and SWAT team standoffs, to going to prison, to now, getting into ministry and helping people overcome the same destructive thing that got me. That's only from God. That's the only way anything like that can be. So on Wednesday nights, at Community Harvest Church in Germantown, we have meetings. Right now the meetings are focused on, they're for families, or people that just want to help or be involved in the ministry of helping these people but don't know how to. Drug addiction has such a stigma that people are scared, and, the grassroots level of helping people is tough, I meet with people that are anywhere from, still using to multiple years of sobriety, and the common thing is there for these people, and these people just need love, and they need to feel accepted. And at one time in my life, like I said, I'm I'm doing, whether we're talking about the OxyContin days of five OxyContin 80s a day, to the methamphetamine days of using anywhere from a gram to, 3.5, 4 grams a day. If Jesus can save me, he can save anybody. And ended up losing everything. But in a sense, I gained everything too. And what I mean is that I might have lost some material things, or lost a little bit of time in prison, or was separated from my kids for a little while. But the things that I've gained in my sobriety have been astounding. I never would have thought that the Lord would use me in the way that he's using me to not only minister to people. Just the other day I get to go into jail and be on the other side of the glass, visiting somebody, discipling them, mentoring them, and giving them hope in a hopeless situation in their own life. And there's so much, so much just awesome stuff. There's so much awesome stuff biblically that if we just grasp a hold of and you just dig into it and read it and learn that those people are so much like you and me. They're all sinners. They need grace. They need the power and the saving and the resurrection power of Jesus Christ in their lives to be able to go on and move forward. And the salvation is an awesome thing. That's what the epitome of the Christian faith is. But the thing about it is that if you really grasp a hold and understand that by his stripes we're healed, and he was bruised for our iniquities, and the things in the sinful ways that we are, that we're covered by the blood, then you don't have the guilt and shame and the horrific downfalls that I see people that don't take that path. They don't choose that path. They try to rely on self-will, and it gives up at times. When a storm comes in, they can't handle it. And they have that desire to use. And, it's possible not to have that desire anymore, and it's possible to be completely free. And, today my life is focused on, now I'm able to wake up every day and go to a normal job and come home and spend time with my family. I've just been recently reunited with my kids, and we're phasing in that part of my life back into it. And things are on the upswing, and things are, I say when I had everything, I had nothing, and now that I have nothing, I have everything. And what I mean by that is, like, once now I've established a personal relationship with Jesus, I have meaningful purpose in my life. And it wasn't until I realized what my purpose was that I was able to really grasp a hold of who I really was. And that I'm an overcomer. That that my mind has been transformed. I'm no longer a slave to the things that I once was, but now I'm a child of God. And there's so much to be thankful for. I'm so thankful that I had a family that was surrounding me to help support me through this process. I'm thankful for the church, that they were able to, be there for me, from my mentors and the guys that discipled me through the storm and said, hey, there's going to be a lot you can't do, but the parts you can't do, give it to Jesus and let him do it. And he'll do it in his time, not ours, but his time. And sometimes things don't work as fast as you'd like them, or sometimes things don't happen the way you should happen. But realize if you finally can surrender and say, hey, he's got everything in his hands and he's going to work it out for your good, then just submit to it. And, I'm really encouraged by the things that have happened, and thank you for letting me share my story.